You're listening to a podcast from The Word.
50 years ago, this weekend, Nick Drake made Pink Moon. I mean, literally made Pink Moon in a weekend.
In two sessions, wasn't it?
2 sessions.
Unbelievable.
At Sound Techniques in Chelsea, I think. Was it Church Street, Chelsea, just off the King's Road? A former dairy. I once recorded that. When's a recording session there?
And didn't Ireland not? I don't think they wanted the album, did they?
Well,
hadn't they kind of given up on him slightly after the first two and just thought?
I'm not sure
they
about
didn't
that.
ask him for another one, you know.
I think the situation was he was still kind of on the books, but Joe Boyd, who had been his kind of protector and sponsor, had gone to the States, hadn't he, to get a job with Warner Brothers.
Yeah.
So he was a little bit directionless, and he put out Brighter Later, and that hadn't done anything at all. And Brighter Later probably bears the marks of Joe Boyd's, interest in trying to make it more commercial and, strings on it and so forth. And then he was just determined that he was going to do the third album completely on his own, and just with John Wood, the engineer who'd engineered the other records. And so all he did was he got in touch with John Wood, whose studio it was, and arranged to go in. So they went on, I think, on the Saturday night and the Sunday night. They could only go in late at night because if somebody was in the studio during the day. So these 2 sessions both started at 11 o'clock at night. And he made the whole of Pink Moon, and that was it. I think there's one.
And doesn't it sound nocturnal? It does.
I suppose it. Yes,
it really does.
It sounds nocturnal. And there's all kinds of stories about how it got delivered to Ireland and left in reception and all that kind of stuff. But the amazing thing is, 2 things struck me: is one, that it was done so quickly, and the other was that it's so short. This is less,
like 28 minutes. No,
28
absolutely
minutes.
Amazing.
So they didn't pad it out at all. And I'm not complaining at all.
I think virtually every song is 2 minutes. There's one that's under 2 minutes, I think. I mean, it's just ridiculous, isn't it?
And it made me think about what are the other albums under 30 minutes long. So, Mark Ellen, would you like to nominate one? Because there's a few quite famous ones, a few very famous ones, actually. The first Ramones album is 29 minutes, 4 seconds long.
Of course it is, yes.
Which it would be, wouldn't it? That's no surprise at all.
17 songs, probably.
Yeah. A Hard Day's Night, the Beatles' masterpiece, is only 30 minutes, 13 seconds.
Amazing.
They're absolutely packed in there. They're absolute perfect, all those songs. I think Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme by Simon and Garfunkel is round about half an hour. And that's also an absolutely terrific record. So there is a direct relationship between kind of brevity and quality, isn't there, really, with these things? They don't hang around, do they? They don't presume upon your patience.
No, they don't, and you're going to make sure that the killer material is there. Although I don't think in this case he probably erased anything. I think that's probably all he had.
No, I think that's pretty much all he had, and it made no more commercial waves than the previous records had done, unsurprisingly.
2 things that struck me about Nick Drake that I was reading about the other day. The one, total album sales, I think for all 3 albums, 4,000 copies.
What, you mean back in the day?
Yeah, back in the day. I mean, that's astonishing, thinking that quite a few people probably bought all 3. What a tiny handful of people he reached at the time.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't that astonishing?
Yeah, and I think the same thing would have applied to loads and loads of people. I mean, because all those people are, great truth is, they're all far bigger now than 50 years later.
Yeah.
Than they were at the time, because the universe of people interested in all kinds of things is far greater. There's more scholars, there's more people reading old Mojo articles, or
the Observer. Music's been used in TV ads and films and stuff.
Yeah.
But the other thing that struck me is that somebody had written something about the fact that he very rarely used choruses because he didn't connect with the kind of folk crowd. And I'd never really thought of that
That's
before.
a good point.
Yeah, you see, if you look at the singer-songwriters of the time, Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, they tended to use choruses.
Yeah, they did.
And choruses are a structure whereby anybody, particularly anybody who's kind of grown up listening to folk music, feels involved. They feel involved in the mechanics of the song, and they can either internally or externally sing along to it.
This is so
you're
true.
expecting this repetition, and you're expecting a repeat of a particular phrase or a melody or whatever, and that's the structure of the song. He never used it. Very rarely.
That's
so it's just
really interesting.
Isn't it amazing?
Because I tell you what, I was at college in the kind of late 60s, early 70s. And I remember, do you remember when Peter, Paul and Mary's Leaving on a Jet Plane was number one in the UK, I think, for about a month, wasn't it? Isn't it a Gordon Lightfoot song? I think it is. I think it's Gordon Lightfoot song. And it's got a very distinctive chorus. It's very strained, melancholy song, Leaving on a Jet Plane, don't know when I'll be back again. And we all used to gather. We're in the hall of residence, and there was only one television in the place. Black white television, obviously. In the
with
common
a coat
room.
hanger in the back to get a better reception.
And everybody would gather for Top of the Pops for two reasons, really. One, to see what was happening in popular music, and two was to leer at Pan's People or Legs and Co.
Yeah, Legs and Co. Yeah,
whatever particular name they went under at the time. And so it was a bunch of blokes, bunch of absolutely regular, unreconstructed. They were certainly not new men in any shape or form, these guys. They were just blokes in the late 60s. And during that month that Leaving on a Jet Plane was on, all these guys would sit there and they'd be the usual sort of ribald cat calls during the Legs and Co. set and so forth. But when it came to Leaving on a Jet Plane, a strange melancholy was settled upon the whole crowd. And when he got to the chorus, everybody would quietly go, Leaving
on a jet plane. Don't know.
It was like an involuntary.
They're sort of shrugging at each other. Yeah. That's right. I know.
Yeah, they were like,
ain't life a bitch.
They were like soldiers on landing craft waiting for D-Day and singing along with, we'll meet again. But that was the power. You're quite right. That was the power of the chorus.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because what he wrote was this sort of this kind of abstract poetry, really. You were never particularly sure what it was about, mostly about his own internal melancholia, I think, But they didn't have the usual structures.
The usual now's your chance.
Now's your chance to join in and feel involved, feel connected. So he lost. I mean, that was a whole audience that he never really connected with.
No, that's true.
It was astonishing that so few people liked him.
I found another great record, Under Half an Hour, which is the great Creedence Clearwater Revival record, Green River. 29 minutes, 25. Absolute perfection all the way.
Completely.
So, yes, if you've got any more suggestions in that line, we're always interested in hearing them.
The Word Podcast, prime cuts of popular culture served fresh each week.
Okay, our birthday guest is Giles Fraser. Hello, Giles. When was
Morning,
the birthday?
Guys.
Morning. How are you? Is your birthday today?
No, my birthday was on Monday, actually. So, so it's birthday week, I reckon.
How was that occasion? Oh, you're taking the whole week off. Very good. How was that occasion marked?
We went out to dinner with the family and at the River Cafe, which you might know.
Oh, very near here,
where I live in Barnes, which was lovely and expensive, but I was actually 60, so it's a big birthday.
That's great. Yes,
the credit card.
Were there any famous people in there apart from your good self? Usually,
no, there weren't actually. There virtually always are, but actually, it was a Monday night. I think the celebs were all doing whatever they do.
They're washing their hair on Monday.
Having their facials. But no, last time we had Kirsten Scott Thomas, and I think Alan Yentov was in the table next to us.
Well, he's permanently there.
I think it's his office. That's the office canteen. So you're in Barnes. Are you anywhere near Olympic Studios?
Well, I tell you what, yes, I am. And actually, we're having a party tonight at the Olympic.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
There's a lovely little record shop just opposite there. Tiny little record shop.
Yeah, run by Roger. I spend a lot of money there.
Oh, do you? Good for you.
Yeah. I think I said, when I was a teenager, I never spent any money in record shops, but I spent hours there. So when he opened a record shop, I thought, right, I'm going to spend as much money as I feasibly can there. And he's not going to credit down on my account.
Yeah.
So what kind of record shop is it? Is it a full service kind of thing, or is it kind of specialist collectory?
It's all, I think it's broadly 60s, 70s, and 80s rock, pop, and jazz. He spends a lot of time making sure all the records that were actually recorded at the Olympic are on display. So
they're always on display in the window, aren't they? That's right.
Yeah,
so you get Led
the window
Zeppelin
every week.
Yeah.
Oh, very good.
It's a very well run. He's got lots of volunteers who run it, who know all about music. I mean, it's not big, as you say, but it's a tremendous thing to have in Barnes alongside the estate agents and coffee shops.
Yes,
yeah.
Long may
artisan bakeries. There's quite a lot of them.
Yeah, it's a shop I can happily go into. You know.
Yeah.
So a tradition that we've long established on this podcast, i.e., last 2 weeks or whatever it is that our birthday guests can raise a topic or put a question either to us or to the massive or something we could all like to think about and talk about. Have you got one, John?
I've got one.
Go on.
I hope you like it. You know, we'll see. I was thinking a lot about, poor old Charlie dying, Paul McCartney publishing his book of lyrics, and thinking about, whether with all these rock gods on what I suppose has to be said is their last lap, they should be doing a little bit more to pass over the skills and tips of the trade to the upcoming generations. So I was thinking, that, for example, there aren't as many obvious choices for headlining Glastonbury as there might be. It's sort of like who could run a stage for 2.5 hours? And I thought, well, is this the time to maybe establish some kind of almost business course run by these rock gods, with mentoring that could take the form of a Harvard Business School course, whether it be virtual or face-to-face. It could be mentoring. It could even be a book, something like How to Build and Sustain a Career as a Stadium God.
Right.
And I was thinking about some of the courses that could be run, and I thought you guys and the Massive might have some other thoughts. But I've got a few. Do you want to kick off?
Go on, kick off.
So I thought Mick Jagger on fitness regimes to run around a stage for 3 hours.
That's a good one.
Times a week.
That's a good one.
Bruce Springsteen on how to structure a set for 4 hours.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because Bruce Springsteen, really important point. Bruce Springsteen doesn't just play songs, he tells a story.
Yeah.
All those songs tell the story. They're put together in a certain way. Carry on. Go on.
Okay. Mick Fleetwood on the importance of a band name and holding on to it.
Yeah, absolutely. The name is the single most important thing in a band's career.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the brand world, so I get that completely. The brand exists way above and years beyond the people behind it, don't they?
Definitely.
U2 on how to stay together for 40 years.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Roger Waters and Dave Gilmour, how to run a legal case against each other if you don't. I'm not sure whether we'll get them both on running the course.
No, I don't think you would.
Brian Eno on how to use collaborators to build a career in music.
Yes.
Yeah.
Neil Young on how to ditch collaborators as often as possible. Coldplay on how to build a successful career without ever shocking people.
That's true.
Have they never done anything remotely controversial?
No, I don't think they have. No,
not at all. But the most controversial thing they've done is to have a world tour that's meant to be kind of eco-friendly and using private jets.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the way it goes.
They sort of disappear from the world, don't they, between albums?
Yeah, they do.
So after that, I thought Iggy Pop on how to build a successful career solely built on shocking people.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good.
Bit harsh, maybe. Robert Plant on how to sustain a career making a different type of album every time.
Yeah.
AC/DC on how to sustain a career making the same type of album every time.
It all works. And what I suppose the only thing is none of these people who've ended up doing all the things that you've so rightly identified would ever have planned to do any of them at all, would they?
Totally agree.
Back when they were 35 or 40 or whatever, they just kept going because they couldn't think of anything else to do, and they liked the life, and that's what they've ended up just doing forever.
Yeah.
And it's extraordinary, and how you can pass those skills on, I do not know. I don't know if it'll be available to later generations to do it. I don't know. I often think a lot of it is to do with the longevity of people like McCartney and Mick Jagger and so forth, is that they came along at a moment when fame was huge. The fame they achieved was of a very profound kind that burned for a long, long period of time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people who come along in the last 10, 15 years are famous to the same degree, because I don't think you can be as ubiquitous nowadays as they could be back then. You know, we all follow our own enthusiasms nowadays, don't we? Rather than
Do you think also it's about? Sorry, Mark, go on.
No, it's good to say the majority of those people who were really successful in the 60s and 70s are the ones who are still the most successful today, aren't they?
Do you think there's anything about the fact, and this goes back to your 71 book, I think, but the 60s and 70s, and because they had less entourages and less managers, they were much more exposed to a broader range of creative inputs and people. They met more people at random. So they've sort of developed a greater sort of palette than maybe someone has today.
I always think the classic case of this is Led Zeppelin. Led Zeppelin, if you look at the inputs into Led Zeppelin, there's everything from folk music to kind of blues music. There's North African music. There's Billy Fury. There's absolutely everything is going into the pot. And then they were followed by loads of groups who just listened to Led Zeppelin.
Yes.
And that's just a product of specialization, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that if you want to live in the world of, of kind of indie music nowadays, you can live in the world of indie music and you need never deal with the mainstream at all. And the same thing applies to dance music or jazz or anything. That wasn't the same in the 50s and 60s. You heard everything, it all came via the same, radio request shows and all those kind of things, where everything was played alongside everything else. So it's a very different world. But I tell you, I heard an interesting fact which kind of keys into this yesterday. Is that I was listening to a very good podcast, which was American podcast. It was about things that happened in 1991.
All right.
And the arrival of SoundScan in 1991, which is the new American way of making up the charts. That prior to the arrival of SoundScan, only I think 6 artists had ever gone into the American album charts at number 1. I think Elton John had done it twice. I think Bruce Springsteen had done it once. Michael Jackson had done it once. I can't remember. Subsequent, and that was based on reporting by shops. They decided how many records they sold. Following SoundScan, suddenly 35 times a year, records were going in straight to number 1. And so what it means is, it's really interesting, is that more people can become briefly famous.
Yeah.
They have that kind of level of celebrity and then it goes away. Yeah. And what happens with the chart subsequent to 1991 is before 1991, records used to go in the chart at the bottom, go up, go down a bit, go up again, go up, and then go to number 1. Nothing does that anymore. Everything either goes in at number 1 or it never goes anywhere near number 1 at all.
Yeah.
So it's a very different kind of way of defining success.
It's all consumed really intensely, isn't it? In that moment.
Yeah. So, Giles, you've got a book coming out this week. Is that right?
No, it came out earlier this year.
Right.
In May.
Yeah. What's your book about?
Plug your book.
Plug the book. Tell us what it's about.
Okay, so there's the book. It's called Let's Fly.
Yeah.
Right. I actually think I think the massive might enjoy it. Alex read it. He's very complimentary about it. So it's so the inspiration, David, is actually a story that you like, which is Nick Lowe's Windfall with the Bodyguard.
God, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So this is about a guy. So the book is set in Notting Hill in 1979 and 2017.
Is it fiction?
It's fiction. It's a contemporary thriller with a bit of coming of age at the beginning. Yeah. So he comes up to Notting Hill, leaves school on the spur of the moment, pretty much. Comes up to Notting Hill and goes and lives in a squat with a mate. They form a band. They write some songs. They do a concert. They make an EP, and then they break up, and that's it. They never go back. It never goes back to music. 7 years later, one of the songs they wrote, Out of the Blue, is covered on a film soundtrack. And he makes quite a lot of money. Rolling on to 2017, it's now 30 years later, and he's actually living in a luxury house opposite the squat in Notting Hill he paid a lot of money for. And he's running a food delivery company, which is about to go public, a sort of Deliveroo type thing. So what people don't know is that he really needs the money because he's in massive debt. So this is absolutely crucial. His life is on the verge of collapse. And what happens then is that things start to go wrong in a bad way. And it all links back to what happened in the squat and the song in 1979.
So that's your book, and it's called
Let's Fly.
Let's Fly, and we'll include the link where people can find out more about it, and possibly even get hold of a copy.
I'll gladly send you a copy if you want. I think the Massive would enjoy it. You guys might enjoy it. There's music throughout it, lots of references to 79 music in particular in 2017.
Okay, well, look, lovely to talk to you on the week of your birthday.
This is a junction in the word podcast. It separates that bit from this next bit.
So we put an appeal out for questions, as we usually do. And the one thing, the burning issue that people really, really need us to pronounce upon, Mark, because they're having great difficulty making up their own minds, is the Adele ticket prices in Hyde Park. Now, you, I know, are keen Adele fan, so you've been looking into what's the best possible investment of your
quantity
money.
of wild horses has yet been invented that would drag me to this occasion, I have to say. Well, I got nothing against Adele. I got nothing against Adele, but my God, this is Hyde Park Day. This is the astonishing issue that no one's
we have to keep this in mind.
Yeah.
This is Hyde Park, which, God bless it, it's all right, but it's the dullest park in London, isn't it?
It's the dullest park in London.
It's a flat piece of ground which has no natural amphitheatre in it at all.
Absolutely.
Does it?
It's a place you're normally allowed into for free.
Yes.
But on this occasion, in fact, I should just very quickly go through the 6 tiers of ticket pricing. You've got a very good answer to why these tiers would have been invented in the first place. We'll come on to that. But it is really astonishing that the cheapest ticket. And before we start, we should just bear in mind that if you think of Hyde Park, have I ever seen anyone? Yes, I have seen one concert at Hyde Park, and it was a gorgeous sunny evening, and it was Live 8 actually. And it was a gorgeous, gorgeous sunny evening, and everything was fabulous. The grass was dry, and you could see, and it was just marvelous. And so you kind of think of it in the best possible light. But imagine, Dave, if it rained. Imagine if it rained the week before. And there are 2 nights. So 65,000 people each night. So if you went on the second night and it had been raining, it would have been churned up appallingly, wouldn't it? The Adele show shoes would be suffering dreadfully. But anyway. 6 tiers. The cheapest tier is £90 general admission. This allows you entry through the main gates and access to an extensive range of bars, food traders, and toilets.
Mark, I'm going to interrupt you because I think you're underselling this slightly. Give me the exact price of the basic admission.
I think it's 90 quid, isn't it?
I thought there was some change in there.
Oh, there might be. Maybe it's £90.85 or something. It's something like that. I think it might be actually. But yeah, it's some specific amount, isn't it? But that allows you in and allows you access to a range of bars, food. So it means lucky old you. You can A, go to the toilet, and B, buy a massively overpriced hamburger. Superb.
I'm going to interrupt you again, because if you don't go in Hyde Park and if you remain in Oxford Street, you can avail yourself of a wide range of bars, and you can find some food outlets, and you can also go to the toilet in John Lewis. You can do all those things. They are available in Oxford Street without paying £90.
With £90, with Adele warbling somewhere about 3/4 of a mile away. But anyway, primary entry. The next thing is primary. Primary entry allows fans into Hyde Park through a dedicated entrance up to 1 hour before the general admission. So that's the idea is that it gives you a 1 hour start to hair up to the front and try and occupy the best possible slot. So that gets you nearer the stage for an extra 21 quid or this. Then there's gold, £273.95, where you arrive at a dedicated entrance for the Gold Circle customers. You gain entry an hour before and watch stage performances from an exclusive Gold Circle standing area. Dave, note standing. So you're standing. You're paying £300 just to stand, but somewhere at least reasonably near the stage. Then there's Diamond, £379.95. Watch from the Diamond View stand and enjoy access to a summer garden. What is the summer garden? You can see that, a little corporate thing with koi carp. Do you think? What do you reckon? Picket fences, more bars.
There'll be a picket fence. There'll be a
couple of parasols.
Plastic flute of champagne. Well, no.
But they do say there is comfortable seating. This is the first time at £379 that it's been possible to actually sit down. The VIP The VIP terrace is £434.95, when you can stand and watch the show in a partially covered grandstand. So this is the first time we've got any indication of weatherproofing. And you get in early, and you can get and visit the summer garden, exactly. And the ultimate, which is the most expensive lot, £579.95. This comes with an itinerary to help you plan your evening.
That's the bit I do not understand.
So what's that about? It's a little sheet of paper that suggests, okay, what you should probably do is come in and have, it also, you get a glass of sparkling wine on arrival and a complimentary bar. So you've got to absolutely drink £600 worth of gin and tonic. But what on earth is this itinerary to help you plan your evening? I mean, I don't know. What are they going to suggest?
All these additional tiers strongly suggest that if you don't avail yourself of what they're offering, either the early entry or the partially covered bit or the itinerary, if you don't avail yourself of any of these things, you will be one of the benighted suckers at the back, suffering the agonies of the damned, having paid £90 for the privilege, because all the additional tiers are trying to get you away from the privations that they've foisted upon the overwhelming majority of the customers who don't have those escape clauses of varying kinds and are going to be treated like people are always treated at major big music gigs, like cattle. In a way that football fans wouldn't put up with anymore and are not expected to put up with anymore. But music fans seem to put up with it. And actually, quite sensible music fans. I mean, I'm not suggesting that adults are bright and kids are not, but these are not teenagers who are going to be buying these tickets, are they?
But these are your neighbors. Remind you of just what a miserable lot you accept. Don't you think, oh my God. You couldn't be more basic.
And I think the contrast with football is quite instructive. That you can get a Wembley and you can pay for the kind of hospitality package and have the nice meal beforehand and all that. But you're not going to get in there any earlier than anybody who's just paid the basic sum of money. You're not going to see any more than anybody who's paid the basic ticket price, and that's the way it should be. Whereas this is very different. How long it will go on, I do not know. I suppose it'll go on this long, as long as performers...
As long as people are prepared to pay for it. And also, there's one more thing, is that she's paying to these VIP stands right at the front.
Yes.
So that's the worst and least energizing audience to play to if you're the performer, because they're not the people who stood there queuing and are desperately keen to see you there. They're the people who paid £600 and are the least motivated when it comes to applauding and expressing their delight, because they've already paid a load of money. Do you know what I mean? And they've hammered a complimentary bar. So dismal. But I mean, it works, as you were saying, we were talking about this yesterday. It works because she will have gone in there and saying, this is the amount of money I want. And the promoter would have thought, how can I construct a system whereby I can extract that amount of money from the 65,000 people?
Yeah, and whoever the promoter is, well, don't blame it on the promoter. These ticket prices are what they are because acts want the amount of money that they want.
Yeah.
And they want the amount of money because they've got private jets and, multiple houses and families and God knows that, that's what they expect. And also record sales have gone and so forth. And so they're going to make it all out of playing live, but they don't want to play live too much. So this is the way to do it. That's the way it works.
But that is an eye-watering sum, isn't
it? Anyway, be our guest. Enjoy yourself.
Literally, fill your boots. Yeah.
So, other questions from the massive or points? Stuart Robbins says this is a recommend more than anything. If you're getting Disney Plus for the Beatles documentary, Get Back, which is coming out in a few weeks' time, it says stick around for the Steve Martin short thing, Only Murders in the Building, which everybody says is terrific, and I must get around to seeing it. Robert Reed says, I rightly claim that outtakes are normally weaker than the originals, but Dylan's earlier 80s album outtakes are the opposite. It's called Springtime in New York, isn't it? This
yes,
latest thing for the bootleg series. I've heard bits of it. He says these are far better than the originals. Would you concur, Mark?
God, I don't know. I went through phases of thinking some of the outtakes are better than the originals, but ultimately, I think you're deluding yourself. You know, I mean, in Dylan's case, the interesting things was he put out records that were unavailable, weren't they? Blind Willie McTell's Series of Dreams, which was recorded for Oh Mercy. And that was the real excitement for me, is you got whole songs. I don't think ultimately I've ever preferred an outtake to the original. But there were things that was a version of Visions of Johanna, which had an additional line in it. He examines the Nightingale's code. And that became a kind of very cool thing for people in the deep end who knew this extra line that had been originally in there. But no, what's astonishing is that he never put out songs as good as Blind Willie McTell, which is a work of absolute genius. It did eventually come out in the bootleg series.
And Series of Dreams as well.
It's really, really good, yeah.
Stuart Penny wants our thoughts on Steve Van Zandt's theory in his memoir, which I've not read, that rock music started in 1965 with Like a Rolling Stone. Good. I like an arbitrary, you know, kind of division of time. I'm all for this kind of thing.
Yes, that's good.
Started in 1965 with Like a Rolling Stone, fair, and ended with Nirvana in 1991, 26 years later. I would say fair.
That's really plausible.
I've not read the book, but I'm sure really Steve Van Zandt knows whereof he speaks.
You could argue that You Really Got Me, which came out, I think, in 1964, might have been with the first rock song. I don't know. That's a possibility.
But the thing about Like a Rolling Stone is it's kind of, here are my thoughts, isn't it? It's the content of the song. This is the content of my soul. Yeah. In the way that You Really Got Me sort of wasn't, you know. Like a Rolling Stone is a bit of a division in that sense. And
but Nirvana's a good place to end. That's true, because after that you kind of look at things and you think I was watching somebody the other day, was it Biffy Clyro on the Jules Holland show? I'm thinking this is really, really good, but you can see all sorts of rock bands echoed in this performance, you know. So Nirvana might have been the last time somebody did something what appeared to be completely original. It's really good. I love those kind of theories. You're right.
Somebody else was asking, what's the best case of a guest being introduced at a gig that you've ever seen? I'm trying to think.
Oh, God, I've got a good one.
I've seen the oddest ones. I seem to remember, it's only just come back to me. I saw Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention in 1971 at the Colosseum, I think it was, in St. Martin's Lane. And that was in the evenings when, do you remember those days? They used to have rock and roll gigs. Used to be on Sunday nights, London theatres were dark. And so you would very often have rock and roll gigs in those theatres on the Sunday night. And I saw Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention with Flo and Eddie and Ian Underwood and Ainsley Dunbar. And at some stage, on came a guy who started jamming with them. And Frank Zappa at the end of the number says, Stephen Stills.
Oh, fantastic.
Just kind of, he didn't introduce him when he came on. He just kind of referred to him as he'd finished, as I seem to recall. What was your case?
Mine was a very arch and very deliberate attempt to produce the most absurd collision at the time. But it kind of worked, actually, which was Shams. I was reviewing for the NME, the Reading Festival in 1979, and Sham 69 brought on Steve Hillage in a one-piece bright orange zip-up jumpsuit. I can remember it. And that seemed absolutely hilarious because they could, for if the kids are united, could not have been a greater contrast. It's quite funny, I thought. It's good.
I think the best one, I didn't see it in person, but I've seen it on YouTube numerous times. And it took place at the place that we've been talking about regarding Adele, which was when Bruce Springsteen played Hyde Park. Paul McCartney came on, didn't he?
Oh yeah, didn't they bust the curfew? Did they have to be stopped in the middle of a song?
He had to stop, but he did. I saw standing there, and the beautiful thing about that was Bruce Springsteen and all his band looked as if they couldn't be more
starstruck. Yeah, absolutely.
At the idea that, and of course, you can only do that with Paul McCartney. There's nobody else you can do that with. It doesn't even work with Keith Richards, does it?
No,
it doesn't work with Bob Dylan because he wouldn't play the right song or whatever. Whereas, Paul McCartney is going to come on and make it a wonderful moment for the E Street Band never mind for the crowd. And I think it kind of has to be like that, doesn't it?
The E Street Band were that generation who first saw them on the Ed Sullivan Show. And McCartney's been doing all these things on Radio 4, which have been really good, actually, with John Wilson, and talking about all the people who've said to him over the years, members of the band and Tom Petty and the Byrds and all that, who have talked about seeing him on the Ed Sullivan Show and how it changed their lives. Must have been fantastic.
Yeah. It's amazing in the McCartney book, the thing that keeps coming up is the amount of stuff he remembers from his childhood. It's as if his childhood was real life, which it obviously was. And then there was the Beatles, and that was no longer real life. You know, that was just a mad dream that's been going on ever since. So
those memories are even more precious, aren't they?
Absolutely. It's a vanished land, you know, of kind of aunties and Wilfred Pickles.
There's a lovely bit in this cultural life with John Wilson, where he talks about how his dad worked at the Hippodrome in Liverpool. And so I don't know if I knew that. He worked in the 1950s. It was a follow spot operator in an evening job, and he would come back in the intervals and rush back to the piano and sing to McCartney and his brother and the aunties, sing the music hall songs that he'd just heard. Absolutely amazing. And he had this wonderful memory of hearing Ken Dodd on the radio. And he said the most exciting thing would be that Ken Dodd would come on and you knew he was on stage, and suddenly there'd be a ripple, there'd be a roar of applause, and there'd be laughter. And you'd think, what was it that he'd done? And he said that was the magic that they used on the moment when Billy Spears comes on stage, as it were, in Sgt. Pepper. Exactly the same thing happens. Whether or not he's factored in those kind of connections after the event, I don't really know. But there's lovely stuff as well when he's talking about it in the 10 song series, where he talks about Penny Lane being partly inspired by Under Milkwood by Dylan Thomas, or the idea of those little village characters, you know. And a teacher at school who taught him the French symbolist Alfred Jarry. Now, he learned about pataphysics, which is why he put pataphysical into Maxwell Silverhammer. Whether or not that's just him rearranging things after the event or not, I don't know. But as you say, his memory of childhood is absolutely fantastic. It's brilliant.
So, well, that's it for this week. What have we got coming up? What might people have missed in the last week or so? I don't know. I've been away. We've announced our return to live presentation.
Back in the open air.
Well, not in the open air.
No. Back in the outside world.
At the West Hampstead Arts Club on November the 22nd. I think that's right, Mark, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We got John Ilsley of Dire Straits talking about his book, his life in Dire Straits, and further guests to be announced in due course. And details of that will be winging their way to you as soon as possible. Don't forget, we very much appreciate you being a Patreon supporter. Like Giles, it was our birthday guest earlier on in this podcast. And if you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, go to patreon.com. Word in your ear. We'll see you next week.
See you then.
This podcast was brought to you by The Word.